I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lancaster County Planning Commission of August 18th, 2021. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, is available at the front of the chambers with the clerk. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. The Planning Commission will be allowing testimony on agenda items by video conferencing. For those who wish to testify by video, you must register with the Planning Department office to participate by calling the Planning Department office 402-441-7491 or by emailing by 10 a.m. the day of the meeting. You will be asked to provide your name, address, phone number, and the agenda item on which you wish to speak, and your position on this item. On the day of the hearing, you will receive a link via email, which will be needed to join the hearing to provide your testimony. If you parked in the parking garage across the street to the north, the gate is open and no parking coupons are required. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff, cellular phone usage is not permitted in these chambers during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. The Planning Commission action today is final on the following agenda items: 1.1B, Special Permit 21031, 1.2, County Special Permit 17043A, and 5.2, Preliminary Plat 21002. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held August 4th, 2021. Is there a motion?
Moved, Campbell.
Second, Joy.
Jerry?
Okay. Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Core?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Jerry to read all the consent agenda items into the record. Once these items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Jerry, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
Yes, before I do that, I just want to note that we have received a couple of public comments in opposition of item 1.2, which is special permit 17043A. Therefore, that application is going to be removed from the consent agenda for public hearing. Okay, the two items remaining on the consent agenda are associated. The first item being 1.1A, changes zone 21029 from AG Agricultural District to AGR Residential District, and the associated special permit 21031 to allow for a community unit plan with associated waivers. Both of these on property generally located at South 54th Street and Silver Springs Court. I will note that this is final action on this special permit unless appealed to the City Council within 14 days. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting the site?
No.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on either of these two items? If so, please stand and state your desire.
I will take a motion.
I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Second, Shear.
Okay. Jerry?
Okay. Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Core?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
I will now ask Jerry to call the request for deferral.
Okay, we have received written communication on behalf of the applicant for agenda item 5.1, which is change the zone 21024 from B1 to H2 on property generally located at 4615 Vine Street. This request is to place this matter on pending until further notice.
Is there a motion?
So moved, Campbell.
Second, Core.
Jerry?
Okay, this is to place agenda item 5.1 on pending until further notice. Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Shear.
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Core.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
We will now proceed to public hearings. The staff will make a brief presentation. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and/or included as part of the record, please place this information in the folder on the podium. I can't lick my fingers to turn the page. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The timer will go off after 4 minutes. The clerk will then indicate you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up your testimony. Once the final minute has lapsed, the clerk will indicate that your time is up. If during your testimony you have copies of documents, please provide them to the clerk. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Jerry, please call the first public hearing item.
Okay, item 3.1 is special permit 17043A to allow soil mining and excavation on property generally located at Southwest 112th Street and West Van Dorn Street. Staff recommendation is for approval. This is final action on this item unless appealed to the county board within 14 days. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this item?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting this site?
No. George?
Thank you. George Wesselhoff, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska. The location for this special permit is on West Van Dorn Street, the southwest corner of West Van Dorn and Southwest 112th. The request is for soil excavation, which includes 7.47 acres, which is located in the northwest part of the property to the west of the buildings and drive that are close to West Van Dorn Street. There was a special permit approved previously for this same area on January 9th, 2018 for soil excavation. There is a provision under the county resolution that a special permit for soil excavation may be approved, but up to a maximum of 3 years. So the initial permit expired, and they were requesting a new special permit, same area, same amount of material. The cuts for the excavation are expected to range up to 18 feet with an estimated volume of excavation of 110,260 cubic yards. Since the first permit was approved, approximately 25,000 cubic yards has been excavated, leaving 85,260 cubic yards remaining. As was done with the initial permit submittal, there was a groundwater report provided for the application, and the report showed that the soil mining operation will not negatively impact the nearby wells. The Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department has no objections to this special permit. Probably the most substantive change from before pertains to the conditions of approval. The county engineer is requesting some revisions or enhancements to the existing road maintenance agreement, which those pertain to the notice requirements, maintenance patrols, and mitigation measures. And I think we have a representative from the county engineer's office here, I believe, that can answer any detailed questions on that aspect. So with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Dick?
George, can you point out on your map right there, which house it was that the lady lives in that was concerned about?
I think, as far as the recent two comments that came through yesterday, I believe there was one that's on Southwest 112th to the north, so it'd be
Right.
to the north of this intersection, and then I think there's another one, I think it's maybe to the south, I apologize, I don't remember exactly.
So they aren't any of those buildings right there by it?
No, I don't believe they were the immediate neighbors, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? George, is this the same applicant as before?
Yes,
Okay. And so they're basically renewing the permit.
correct.
And you mentioned the enhanced conditions of approval from the county engineer. These are not standard conditions. I mean, these are conditions that are above and beyond what have been put in place for other excavation permits?
I would let the county engineer representative speak to that question.
Great, thank you.
Pam Dingman, Lancaster County Engineer. So what I would say in regards to this maintenance agreement is that these are things that are being added to the agreement, really that we're going to add in all future agreements, just to kind of define what these are. Unfortunately, what happens with special permits like this is the county engineer's office, we become the permit police. And we're not really equipped to be the permit police. And so what we were trying to do with these items is just add a little more definition to what needs to be done in order to maintain these roads. And maybe none of these things are needed given the operations, and maybe they are. But we feel that it's just better conveyed if we add these to the agreement, and they'll be standard items in all future agreements going forward.
Great, that's very helpful. So I did have a question about enforcement. That kind of by default falls to your area?
Sadly it does, and then I don't really have any authority in regards to it. So the complaints do come to our office, and then really the only action that it can be taken is then to go back to the commissioners and have this permit actually revoked if there's an issue. And so it's like a light switch. It's really an all or nothing response, which is problematic with special permits for us in the county. And so I think when people call my office, they expect me to have an answer and a solution, and I don't have the authority other than to continue to ask the contractor or the landowner to make modifications associated with these agreements. And then also, I'll just say that at times with special permits, there's the assumption that anything that happens to the road is the special permit holder's responsibility. And I think we all know that that's not reasonable. And that sometimes there's conditions in the road like the flooding of 2019, or sadly like today where we haven't had rain in a long time and it's very dusty out in the county, that don't necessarily fall back to being the permittee's responsibility.
So do you know if there have been complaints with regard to this specific property?
Initially when this property opened up, there were a number of complaints that we did work with the permit operator on. There were also some days that there were complaints that we went out there, and again, when we get a complaint, we don't really have any other solution but to go out there and see what's going on. And it appeared that nothing was going on in the pit. And so what I will say is initially there were issues, and we did get those worked out.
I did have one question about the specific terms in these conditions. Maintenance motor patrol, what does that involve?
Well, it maybe sounds fancier than it is, but what it is a motor grader, and a motor grader is a machine that has a blade in the middle of it, and it's what we use to maintain our gravel roads, and we call that a patrol. We have 23 patrol districts around Lancaster County, and so what we're trying to emphasize here is, and make a definition so that we all have a clear understanding, is what is additional maintenance. And how would we define that?
Okay. But these conditions were not as a result of any issues that you saw on this particular property, but because you're going to implement these going forward.
We're just trying to have a greater level of understanding and definition for when additional maintenance is needed. It's really just incrementally becoming better with what our understanding is.
And George, these conditions in number 6 that are articulated there, they are reflected in the conditions of approval?
Yes, one of the conditions of approval is that the applicant enter into a revised road maintenance agreement.
Great. Other questions for Pam or George? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have testimony from the applicant.
Good afternoon, Rig Engineering. My name is Nate Burnett, here on behalf of High Plains Enterprises. I think George and Pam did a great job. As discussed, this is essentially bringing forward a previously approved special permit. As George mentioned, approximately 25,000 of the 110,000 cubic yards have been mined. We anticipate that same amount over the next 3 years. This pit is on just a as needed basis, so if there's stuff in the area, it will be mined. If not, as Pam mentioned, that there's times when they might go by on a complaint and nothing was going on. So typically when we run into special permits, there's dust and there's traffic. Those are the 2 complaints. The client can't control every single aspect of dust out in the county, but there will be a water truck on site, and they are agreeable to the additional things that have been brought forth that will become standard. And then again, there were some issues early on, but those have been worked out, and I feel confident that this pit will be successful. And so if you have any questions for myself, or Mark from High Plains is here as well to answer questions.
Any questions for Nate?
Nate, when the initial complaints were made, how long after those complaints were made and everything was resolved did the pit continue to be excavated?
I'm going to ask Mark to...
Was it a number of months or years, or I'd like to know the context of that.
Good afternoon, Mark Smith, High Plains Enterprises. So the pit was initially approved early on in 2018. On that, we're using it for several roadway projects around the county and the city. That's mainly what it's been used for out there, being on the far west side of town. So when we initially started getting the complaints, it was basically the frequency of which we were watering the roads. If you've driven that roadway at all, yes, it gets very dusty. And so we needed to basically increase the frequency of which that roadway was getting watered, and that's what we did. Like say after that, we would get several phone calls from the county asking us why we weren't watering the road, and once again they would come out and find out that we weren't doing any operations there. Once that we did kind of figure out the pattern in which we needed to water that roadway, we take care of it in the morning when you're getting your big morning rush of traffic. Everybody's going to work, everything like that. Around lunchtime, and then again before the end of the day, before everybody starts coming back home again. And like I say, when we were doing those operations and staying on top of it, we were controlling the dust to a minimal side at that point. Like say, at that time though, the time that we were really excavating out of that pit, there were several other construction projects going on around there. The biggest one was they were bringing riprap and materials into Conestoga Lake out there, and one of the bridges was out close to that lake, so they had to go literally right by our pit to get to that area. And I would say that 90% of the time, the trucks that were kicking up dust and speeding and everything like that were the trucks that were not involved with our mining operation that we had out there. We would on the regular go out there, follow our trucks to ensure that they were not speeding. I would say on average, they were going 10 miles an hour under the speed limit. That's our trucks that we can control. I can't control any of their operations that were going on out there. But to get back to your question that you asked, we have not excavated dirt out of there for approximately 2 years, year and a half to 2 years. So it was basically that initial year that we really got that first 25,000 yards of dirt out of there.
The reason I asked the question is because you feel comfortable that after the initial complaints were done and you modified your operation to comply with that, there was a period of time that you were still operating in the pit, that everything was running smoothly. That's my
Yes,
point.
yes.
That I'm trying to get you to
Yes, that is
respond to.
correct. Like I say, with what we could control on our side of it, we had several conversations with the county, and they would come out there and observe it as well, that our trucks that were taking part of our operation, obviously we'd use West Van Dorn Street, we'd go north on 112th, we'd go south on 112th, depending on which areas we were working at. But what we could control with our operation was going smoothly at that
You
point.
got it fixed
yes.
and then it worked
Yes.
fine after that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Smith, could I get your mailing address, please?
Business address is 18570 Southwest 29th Street, Martell, Nebraska, 68404.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now take testimony in support of this application. Any neutral testimony? Then testimony in opposition.
Good afternoon. Andrew Willis, Klein Williams, 233 South 13th Street. On behalf of John and Kim Benish, who live on West Van Dorn Street, real close to the site. Generally speaking, I don't think the issue is the borrow pit and the excavation. I think the issues have been identified already. It's the health and safety concerns with the dust and the traffic that's coming from this operations. And I believe there'll be some other people to give some more detail on that. But my main concern, again, I think it's already been identified, is there's no real enforcement mechanism or no way to deal with this when there's problems. They've made some complaints in the past previously. I think they may argue that it was resolved as well as it was. But even, I mean, with the new conditions, which are great that we're putting in additional conditions, there's just there's no way to for a neighbor or someone with a problem to get some resolution to this. How do we resolve this when there's an issue? And so I guess what I would like to see is some additional conditions put in there. It might take, maybe slow down approval today to think through this and what those would be in order to be able to enforce those conditions to make sure we maintain the health and safety of for the neighbors along this path. And really, it comes down to the amount of traffic, the dust that's generated, and it just is pretty excessive in comparison to what I think it was anticipated. And so really, that's what, from the actual permitting and the approval, it just seems like there's no way to deal with an issue when it arises, and there has been, and the neighbors are concerned that this will be a continuing problem into, as this continues. And again, I think probably, I don't know that I have the answers right now to say what language needs to be put in there, but I think it does, ideally we would, again, maybe just slow this down, get a chance to think through that and figure out what the right way to enforce that is. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dick?
In as much as they upped their watering and such, and it was actually some other company that was transversing the road that seems to have caused a lot of the complaints, how would you control that?
Yeah, great question. I think I'll allow, my understanding is that the number of trucks from this pit were significantly more than was anticipated and probably and stated in the permit. I know that there's now even a condition that would talk about if there's going to be more than 4 trucks in a day, they would notify the county, which again is sort of a great piece of trying to resolve this. But then what happens? Either they notify the county and then that doesn't mean anything, or they notify them and then there's still more dust and still, it still hasn't been resolved. Haven't really directly answered your question, because again, I don't know that I know the answer to that as I stand here today.
Oh, it's a public roadway.
Right,
And that's awful hard to control.
It is, other than if you have the side dump trucks from this excavation and you see,
Right.
one coming every 10 minutes rather than than 5 in a day or something like that, you can kind of, realize on those days where that traffic is coming from. But past that, I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, to some extent, there is other traffic on the road as well, but.
Right.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Other testimony in opposition?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
My name is Deb Fanlin. I reside at 10705 West Van Dorn. When this was all proposed in January 2018, I sent 2 emails in opposition of this. However, didn't matter. The road is extremely dusty. Last night, my eyesight on my car was disabled as I was following a pickup truck. 2 years ago, or whenever this excavation was starting in 2018, I was on my way to work. It was before 8 a.m. There was a school bus stopped, car behind it. I almost rear-ended it. There's so much, a semi was going west. There's just so much dust. It's a safety concern. There's now a new residential acreages on 98th in Van Dorn, which school buses, kids, young drivers. I'm just opposed it. There was no watering of the road. My mother-in-law lives in Emerson. Her county road is sprayed with calcium chloride or magnesium chloride. They don't have that problem there, and there's farm trucks and equipment going by. I propose that they reroute it on 112th, where there's less traffic. I think that's all I have to say. But it is extremely dusty. And it is a safety concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Other testimony in opposition?
Yes, Craig Johnson at 10365 West Van Dorn, Denton, Nebraska 68339. My phone number is 402-505-2696. I was here for the initial application and approval of this special permit 3 years ago. I initially did not oppose it. I actually wanted just to see some conditions placed on the special permit, which did not occur. So I'm back here now opposed, and also asking for some additional conditions put onto the permit. I understand that my questions will be rebutted, can be rebutted, but I will have no rebuttal at this meeting to those answers. I understand that. So my rebuttal will occur at the Board of Commissioners meeting if this is approved today. What I'm going to ask at the end of this is that you actually hold in abeyance your approval of this until such time additional questions can be answered. And I have some specific questions. I hold a CDL license, commercial driver's license. I have driven a commercial semi for the Midwest Co-op here. So I understand what it is to drive a truck, a semi. And so there's a couple other things that I had asked for 3 years ago that were ignored by the commission. And so I'm going to ask for those again. First observation is that this will generate over 6,000 loads, over 6,000 trucks, if all the material is hauled out. That's loads, so double that. That's 12,000 trips. And so that brings me to my first question. It says 4 trips in the guidance by the planning staff. Well, is that 4 loads? Or is that 2 loads and 2 empties? The nomenclature in driving a truck is a trip is either a loaded trip or an empty trip. So the guidance given by the planning staff doesn't even specify. Is 4 trips, 2 loads, and 2 empties? Or is that 4 loads and 4 empties? In other words, 8 trips. So there's some questions here that I think need to be answered, and I don't think they'll be able to be answered today. I certainly support the fact of trying to police this agreement, because it falls back on the homeowners to police it, to complain. The planning staff's not going to be out there. The county engineer doesn't have time to be out there policing this. calls into the county sheriff if they're speeding. All of that's going to be on the backs of the people that live out there. Something has changed drastically in 3 years. There's now a subdivision located at 98th and West Van Dorn with about 25 homes. They weren't there when this was approved 3 years ago. Thank God the prevailing wind in the summer is out of the south. I live on the south side of the road, and that development's on the south side, so most of the dust is going to the north. But that's not always the case. Sometimes there's no wind. I know the health department approved this, but did they do a on-site inspection and evaluation on West Van Dorn when they gave their approval? Because it says in there, only the health department may put additional requirements on this special permit. May. Well, they have to have some proof to do that. Have they been out there? Have they done an inspection on site to look at the dust problems that we have out there? The additional motor patrols, which is the grading, as pointed out by the county engineer. That's great, but you know what? It makes the problem worse. I would say, let's skip the motor patrols and do it once a month. Why? Because that road has all limestone fines on it. So when the motor grader comes back out, it pushes all the fines into the road. And you know what? You have clouds of dust. I've got 2 videos right here I could show you if you have any interest, or I can send them to you. One shows the pit being worked last week. A bulldozer working the pile. Was the special permit approved last week? I don't think so, but they were working the pile last week. Gee whiz, seems like a violation to me of the special permit. But I've got video of the bulldozer working the pile. I also have a backhoe working out there, a video of that last week. I followed a truck in there yesterday, 18-wheeler, side dump truck. I got a video of it yesterday. Followed it in there. I had to stay 300 yards back because I couldn't see otherwise. The road had just been graded a couple days before, by the way. All those fines pushed into the road. So who monitors the compliance? How often? Were there any violations by this permittee before that caused this to be shut down or at least stopped temporarily? What were those violations? I asked and am requesting that you lower the truck speed on that stretch of road, that 2 miles. Put up some traffic signs. Lower the truck speed. I understand 10 miles an hour, and he's asked his trucks to do that. But his trucks aren't going to be the only one hauling out of there. It's like the 4 trips and the notification. He's open for business. People are doing construction around the county. Hey, we need a load of dirt. Go get it. They aren't going to give him notice. They're going to show up with an 18-wheeler side dump and load me. And he's going to load them because it's money.
1 minute.
I'm going to ask for an extension. I just got a little bit more over the time limit. Thank you very much for that extension. I had asked 3 years ago for truck signs to be put on there to lower the speed limit. The response from the county engineer is the county had 14,000 signs to take care of. That was its justification, 14,000 signs. So 4 more is going to be a problem. That's not an answer. The speed limit on an unposted county road is 50 miles an hour, and that's unposted. Drive the interstate, it's posted 75 or 65 in the city. You know how people follow speed limits. There's many people that go beyond 50 miles an hour on that road. Dust is directly correlated to number of wheels on the ground and speed. And let me tell you, an 18-wheeler creates a lot of dust. The second thing I had requested 3 years ago was no jake braking, also known as engine braking. I didn't do it when I drive truck. And the reason because it's extremely noisy. What you're using is the compression of that diesel engine to slow the truck down. Very common practice by private operators, people that own their own truck. The reason is because it saves on their brakes. Brakes are expensive. They wear out. And so what trucks do is they use their engine compression to slow the truck down the hills. And we've got several big hills leading out to 112th. And so we've got engine braking going on. I've heard it when they were hauling that rock, as mentioned earlier, out to Lake Conestoga with the riprap. Unbelievable noise. You can hear a mile away a truck jake braking or engine braking. I asked for engine braking signs to be put on there so that we don't have that. And again, the applicant can probably say, well, I'll make sure my trucks don't jake brake. Okay, fine, but what about the other people coming out there? Guyana, whoever it might be, who knows? Traffic counts. I looked at the traffic counts on the city website. The last time the traffic count was taken on my stretch of Van Dorn was in 2017. 473 was the traffic count. The county engineer, and you can check testimony previously from the last time, has commented that this is probably the busiest stretch, if not one of the busiest stretches of gravel road in the county, 473. Let me point out that under the 21 to 2026 1 and 6 year road plan, 2 standby projects that are on that plan is the paving of Southwest 14th Street between Bennett Road and Highway 33. That's 2 miles. It's called the Centerville Project. The 2018 count for that was 344 and 431 respectively in that 2 mile stretch. We've got more traffic than a road that's going to be paved. North 162nd, Ashland Road to Highway 6. Help me understand why this project's being done. It's in the northeast extreme corner of the county, $5.5 million. In 2017, the traffic counts respectively for the 8 mile stretch were 161, 201, 236, 260, 289, 324, 302, 261. 8 miles less than the amount of traffic on our stretch of West Van Dorn. West Van Dorn is a feeder. It takes traffic from that southwest portion, and people, rather than going down to pavement on Denton Road or Highway 6, take Van Dorn. We're asking for just reasonable accommodation here to keep the dust down. Having that water truck out there all day long during operation would help. That would keep the dust down. Everybody out there knows after a rain, it's really nice to drive on West Van Dorn because the rain keeps that down for about a day or two. Unfortunately, right after the rain, the motor grader comes back. And so we only have about a day or two of relief. So I'm just reasonably asking for some things to be done to keep the speed down on the trucks that generate the dust, help the health for all these 25 homes that weren't there 3 years ago, and basically delay the approval, at least from this meeting to a next one, to give you a chance to ask some of these questions. And you'll get some responses, I'm sure. You'll probably get some responses to these things I brought up, but they won't be detailed answers to them. They just can't be at this point. That's all I have.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Further testimony in opposition?
I'm Margaret Renee Bon Manley, and I live on the north side, 11,000 West Van Dorn. So I get a lot more dust because I am on the north. And I can testify that last time there is no water trucks. There's a water truck sitting on their property, and I'm home all day long, so I can testify they don't water it. And the trucks do rumble and go too fast, and it creates a lot of dust, a lot of rumbling. I just had all new windows, so I hate to even see seals broke on those just from the traffic of the semis. And it is just extremely dusty road. I'm surprised there's not a lot more accidents just from whether it's blowing or just lingering in the road. It's always too much rock and too maintained. Every week he's there, if not twice, to stir up the dust. So I kind of agree with all my neighbors too that I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other testimony in opposition? Okay. I'm Kim Benish at 10301 West Van Dorn on the south side. And this has been going on 3 years. It wasn't a problem last year, but the first 2 years before the neighbors were there, they're not all aware of how bad it was. And we were the ones calling to complain at first because we couldn't play baseball in the yard with our son. It was just constant. It wasn't like one truck or 2 trucks. I mean, we live on a gravel road. I deal with it. It was constant, every 5 minutes. It was unbelievable. I used to walk to Conestoga and I couldn't because I'd be on the road like I thought I was going to get run over because it was a 20-minute like cloud of dust. And so when we did call to complain, because they're just down the street, we know who the family is, we know them, they must have known it was us, I didn't know. And then they'd start jake-braking by our house, honking, flipping us off. It was so disrespectful. I don't know what it is, but if they could reroute, I want them to move the dirt. I just don't want it to be in this situation. My daughter just turned 16, and when she pulls out, I mean, it's already scary on a gravel road, but to not be able to see for 8 hours of the day nonstop, it just cannot work like that. I just don't know what else to say.
but I am concerned and I do oppose it. And I hope we can work it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Other testimony in opposition? Okay, staff questions?
With the county engineer, too.
That is, yeah.
Go ahead, Dick.
My question would be to you, Pam, and that is, based upon the things that have come forth, they really aren't something that is being created necessarily by this borrow pit. Is there anything the county engineer can do that might address some of these issues?
So, Mr. Campbell, and sadly, several of you have been on the Planning Commission for a number of years and have heard my endless pleas for more funding for county engineering. When I come before you next month, you'll probably hear more of the same. If we're to look at what of our property tax dollars have gone to new pavement in the last 3 years, you'll note that it's probably about $250,000 for paving. When we talk about what is the issue in the county, it really is that, in the previous budget year, we had $0 allocated for paving. We're a growing, very populated county, the second most populated county in the state of Nebraska. We have not 1 mile or 2 miles of road that need to be paved. We have 28 miles that need to be paved, but yet we continue not to make progress on it. So sadly, the only solution that my department has is to continue to maintain these gravel roads. We know that a gravel road is very difficult to maintain after it has 300 cars a day. And that's the point at which we have to get the motor grader out on it once a week or maybe even twice a week. We have gravel roads in the county now that have more than 600 or 700 cars a day. And I will also say it is true, we're behind with traffic counts. Last year with COVID, we were unable to do traffic counts. I really felt that any information we gathered as an engineer wouldn't be valid because people weren't out driving. We count about a third every year, 25% to a third, depending on what year it is, of our 1,400 center line miles. And so we're aware that the county is growing. We're aware it's a problem. With roads like this, and it really gets to be a horrible escalating scenario, because there's so much traffic on the road, we lose the base to the gravel road. Because we lost the base to the gravel road, we need to use the limestone to stabilize the road, and we hope to put gravel on top. But in the situation where you have this much traffic, you're always losing the base of the road. So, we will continue to do whatever we can to stabilize this corridor, but sadly, we're to a point where the only thing that will stabilize the corridor is the funding and catching up with that need for pavement.
Are you familiar with the treatments that the previous gentleman spoke about? Would that be an alternate?
So I am familiar, and my office has been studying the treatments. The treatments for gravel, in order to stabilize them in dust, are very expensive. And we're trying to get a true handle on what that really means. And we believe that it means that there's somewhere between $7,500 and $15,000 a mile to stabilize a year. When we look at other jurisdictions, such as Sarpy County does have a dust control program. They do apply dust control twice a year, and then they also apply dust control that they ask the citizens to pay for. We have not done that in Lancaster County. Dust control has some issues. It probably does abate the dust. Nearest I can tell from the areas I've gone out and witnessed, 60 to 70%, it's not 100% abatement. It also makes the road very, very hard. And so in order to apply dust control, we need to rip 12 to 15 inches of that road off, recompact it, and then apply the dust control, because the road becomes very difficult to maintain once you've applied the dust control. And then there's one more thing. Well, actually two more things. when it rains, then it really has a tendency to get slimy. And we haven't done it in Lancaster County with our soil types, and I have concerns about how the public will handle that. And so we are looking at a pilot program, and we are going to do a mile as a test project in Lancaster County. I have emphasized for the last 2 years in my 1 and 6 program and in my budget hearing that we need to be allocated funding for a dust control program, especially if we're going to continue not to pave these roads. But that has not received any funding.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Pam, can you tell us how you guys define a trip? Is that, one, back and forth? Is it just one way?
We would define it as one loaded truck out of the site.
George, I have a question kind of for you. I know that this permit was approved before in 2018, so then the 3 years, would it have expired in January of 2021?
Yeah, I think it's 3 years from approval is how that operates.
So if they were operating right now, it would be kind of outside that permit.
Yeah, they no longer have a current permit.
Did violations cause the permit to be shut down before for temporarily or at all, or?
I'm not aware of that. No.
Okay.
And I will say my office does not have the authority to shut down a permit. We expressly, in government, we operate within our authority, and I expressly do not have that authority.
Who would have that authority? Do we know?
The county commissioners.
Okay. And then, as far as the engine braking go, I mean, I assume that you can put up signs, but then again, it comes to enforcement, and that would fall outside of your purview.
So, as far as engine braking is concerned, we have not been installing engine braking signs within the county. There's a couple reasons for that. One, the sheriff has no way to enforce that. He has no equipment to determine whether somebody was over the decibel requirement in that. So then what happens sadly is, and I'm just going to emphasize sadly, is wherever we put up an engine braking sign, typically people ask us to take it down because on occasion, when a sign like that goes up, people now know that they're annoying whoever is in the area with the engine braking, and the behavior becomes worse. So we do not currently put up engine braking signs.
Thanks for explaining those.
It's unfortunate.
Christy?
When I was reading on some of the, before beginning, we have the concept of the post-performance bond. What, do we have any other, is the performance bond part of a solution to enforcement? And who would enforce that? Does that go back to the county commissioners?
I think the bond reference is for the restoration of the site. Trying to find that here. That has to do with the site has to be restored after the project is completed, and that's what that pertains to.
Okay.
So I have a question about the trips again. So we talked about the added condition of the or notifying the county if 4 or more trips are going to be made in any one day. I think we've touched upon this quite a bit, but really there's no method of enforcement if, in terms of determining whether there have been, if a applicant is regularly making more than 4 trips, it is really up to the folks in the area to try and document that and then bring that to the attention of the county. But then if with that information, there's nothing there's nothing to be done. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, there is a process for the special permit, and so I think what you're really asking is more of a legal question. Again, I'll default back to, I have no authority to enforce other than when my office receives complaints, we do go out and we do check the corridor. And when we're out maintaining the corridor, of course, we also have supervisors that check the corridor on a regular basis too.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Applicant rebuttal.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out a few things. Again, before us today is specific, the special permit. It's not West Van Dorn or Conestoga Lake stuff that happened previously. What's before the commission today is specific to this project, the special permit. As far as what High Plains can control is what they've done. Specific to our request, the health department has said approval. The county engineer, we've discussed with them. They've testified here this afternoon as well, that there were some issues. We've been upfront about that, but those things got worked out. And so with kind of those two main jurisdictions, the health department and the county engineer, I'd request that the commission listen to those things, noting that, yes, there are some outstanding issues with this stretch of roadway, but to the best of our ability and with some of that additional language, we hope to have a successful borrow pit. I don't know, Mark, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, actually. So a couple things on that side of it. With everything that you've heard, basically what it comes down to ultimately is dust. Okay. That's the biggest complaint that everybody's had. That's the biggest complaint that we got when we were operating the pit prior. So on average, for High Plains on a county road or a city roadway project going through there, on average we would run 4 trucks. Okay, so 4 trucks getting through Lincoln or wherever we'd have to get through, easy math, an hour round trip. So we've got, in an 8-hour working day, we've got 32 trips coming out of that pit. Okay, and that's over an 8-hour day. Now there might be days where there's way less than that. There might be days when there's way more than that. The agreement that we had with the county is anytime that pit is operational, they put it in there as any more than 4 trips that we notify them. Once that was put into our prior special permit that we had, that was followed. The reason why that was followed is we do a lot of work with the city and we do a lot of work with the county. The last thing I want is Pam or one of her superintendents calling me all day, every day, stating that people are having complaints over what we're doing, and or they're calling in complaints and we are there working, but we're not holding up to our end of what we're doing. So with over 400 cars or whatever Mr. Johnson said that the traffic count on that day, I can comfortably say that on average, High Plains would make 32 trips out of that pit on a day-to-day basis. There's no way possible, nor would the county want it, nor would anybody else want it, for a water truck to continuously go up and down that road all day, every day. Okay, the more moisture that we put into it, it's the same thing that happens on if we would send our trucks down a gravel road after a big rainstorm. Okay, you're going to do damage to the roadway at that point. What we're trying to do with our water truck is knowing how many additional trips that are going down that roadway from what a normal average day would be with normal traffic. We're trying to offset that with the dust control that we're doing. And like I say, I think when we were operating out of that area, that we did a good job of it once that we figured out the rate of which we needed to do that. You had the question of, after Mr. Johnson brought it up, that we were out there here last week. Yes, we were. The reason for that is we still have SWIP to maintain on that site. So there was no dirt going out of that. But we did have machines there maintaining what we have to do to maintain our agreement with the county, following the codes that we have to follow on that side. So, that's what we've got there. We have told our drivers, and like I say, and I've said it prior, I can only control our trucks, and or if we do hire on additional trucks, what they do as far as speed, no Jake brakes, anything like that. I worked out at that pit several times, several days when we were excavating soil out of it last time. And I would watch the riprap trucks come down the hill to turn onto 112th Street, and I would hear their Jake brakes all day long. But what I can tell you is you didn't see a High Plains truck doing the same thing. We're not out there trying to get permission for the special permit to make all the homeowners in the area angry, okay? That's not what our goal is. Our goal is to have a soil borrow site strategically placed throughout the county, like we have other ones, that when it comes time to do these roadway projects and other projects that are going on, we can price them accordingly because we have soil at the correct area as to where it needs to be. Nobody wants to haul dirt from the far east side of town for a project that's on the west side of town. At the end of the day, all it does is cost the city, county, and state more money, thus costing the taxpayers more money. So with that, like I say, we can only do what we can do to control our trucks. The nice part is I think that most of the other projects that were going on out there have been completed. I know that Pioneer Street is opened up as well. I know there's some other culvert projects going on out there that will cause some additional traffic and things like that, but we will still water the roadway like what we always have. We put signs up for watch for turning trucks to let everybody aware of what's going on. And like I say, we know that there's new developments and there's subdivisions that are being built on West Van Dorn Street. Like I say, we're not out there to make people angry for the dust that's going on. So anytime that we can divert our trucks to go south on 112th Street, 2 miles to hit pavement, or they can go north on 112th Street, same thing to O Street to hit pavement, where there's way less development, way less houses, that's what we try to do, okay? I'm not trying to get a mining permit to put more work on the county because they're gonna get additional phone calls, and I don't want my guys that are out there actually excavating dirt having homeowners come up to them complaining about the dust and everything like that. We do everything that we can in our power to ensure that we're following everything that's been set forth in front of us to maintain our permit and keep this going.
So there was a comment made that other haulers maybe take soil from this site. And when you say you can control your operation, your trucks, are there other operators that actually come in? So it's only your trucks that
So it's
haul
only
from-
High Plains' trucks and or any additional trucks that we would hire.
Right.
There's no other excavation contractor that comes into this pit.
But my point is, the other trucks that you hire, when you say that you'll control what you can control.
Yes.
You will control those other trucks that you
Yes.
hire.
Yes.
That's where I'm going with that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But there's no other company, you know,
Right.
we don't allow another excavation contractor to come out
Come
there.
in and do work there.
Because at the end of the day, it's our name that's attached to
Right.
this permit. And if there's an additional, you know, if you just open it up to the whole county or anybody in the state to get dirt out of there, then there are going to be several problems because
Right.
they're not going to follow the protocols that we have set forth in our permit.
Yeah, I'm just trying to winnow it down
Yep,
to
yep,
what you
yep.
can control is
Yes.
essentially what's coming out of that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, just, is there any explanation as to why the delay happened in renewing the special permit? If it expired in
I think
January?
just, you know, as previously mentioned, nothing's really been hauled from the last 18 to 24 plus months. And, you know, we kind of just lapsed and it was like, oh, we need to get that renewed. So that would be the explanation that I have.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Shear.
Jerry?
Okay, that was Campbell and Shear.
Yep.
Okay, Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Raymond Yost,
Yes.
Shear,
Yep.
Edgerton,
Yes.
Core.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
I would move that we approve SP 17043A.
Second, Shear.
If I can explain, I totally can understand and empathize with the homeowners with the dust and situation. But basically, I think that's a county problem and not this hauler's or this company's problem. They're being, according to what we've heard, very conscientious on how they are handling some of the things that have been complaints or have been other trucks that are with their J brakes and so on and so forth. So I see absolutely no reason why not to renew this permit at this time.
I'll follow up with that. I was going to make the same comment, essentially, but I'll make it another way. From a land use comp plan perspective, the things that we deal with, there really is no reason, in my opinion anyway, for me to vote against this permit. But I will I do recognize, I think as Dick said, said, I agree with him 100%. There are some health, safety, welfare issues here. But I'm having a hard time thinking that they're the applicant's issues. So they do exist, there's no question about that. But from what Pam said, and we don't have a health department person here, but they've obviously endorsed this. The issues are somewhere else, not the landowner and not the applicant. So I'm going to support the motion, but with the recognition that there are some issues that I'm like, Andrew, I don't know what the answers are, but it'd be good to get those addressed somehow. But don't put it on the applicant's back. That's where I'm at.
Anyone else?
I tend to agree with Dennis. I mean, I can't say definitively that this is the applicant's, problem that they've created it, and/or that we should put the burden of fixing it on them when it's a public road and.
Yeah.
Right. I agree with my fellow commissioners. I'm not saying that there aren't conditions that might mitigate, but it seems like it's bigger than the permit that's in front of us. And I don't know that we would ever be in a position to know what those conditions would be that would provide mitigation that would resolve those issues. And I think that the special permit makes sense to move forward with. Jerry?
Yeah, this is for the approval of special permit 17043A. Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Core?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Okay, next item, just reiterate, item 5.1, change to zone 21024, it has been placed on pending until further notice. I would note that on this next item, Commissioner Shear has declared a conflict of interest and therefore will be recusing himself from acting on this application. Preliminary plat 21002 from 7 commercial lots on property generally located at 4731 West O. This is final action on this item. Staff recommendation is for conditional approval. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting the site?
No. Tom?
Good afternoon. Tom Jacob, planning staff. So we have a hopefully pretty simple preliminary plat here. It is for 7 lots on approximately 21.7 acres. It's located southeast of the intersection of Southwest 48th and West O Street. Let's give you an idea of where it's at. This property was rezoned in July of this year from AG to H4, so it's now highway commercial. Area right there. The project will have 2 new public streets coming. O Street's up here. This is Southwest 48. This will continue a little bit further south and then curve this new street, West Monroe. Will actually line up with Monroe Street that's over here, which is a platted, unbuilt street, but it is right-of-way. There will be a little stub street, Sylvan Avenue, which will line up with Sylvan here, which is another platted but unbuilt street. So that will, facilitate future development here for those roads. The city did agree, Lincoln Transportation and Utilities, that Sylvan would not have to be built all the way to the boundary due to some topographical constraints. But with the first final plat, the developer would pay to the city the equivalent of the gap. The agreement is that they can build it to within 25 feet of the boundary. And then at the time of the first final plat, they will pay the city what that amount would be to build that gap. And then whenever this part comes in the future, the city would then be responsible for building that gap of pavement. There would be, currently, there's 2 driveways to O Street. Those will have to be closed, and there will be no direct access to O Street. All access will come off of here. The developer is also required to put a right turn lane in Southwest 48th. We did, as you are aware, this was deferred 2 weeks ago. The city, planning, Lincoln Transportation and Utilities, and Watershed Development met with the developer to discuss some of the issues. One of them had to do with revising detention instead of having a lot of small detention cells. That was worked out. There will be a larger detention cell on the south side of Monroe Street. And I already talked about the gap on Sylvan. The other issue was the pavement of West M and when that would be required. As you can see in this drawing, they really don't have any direct access to M Street until Sylvan would get built. So it was agreed that with their final plat, their first final plat, they would show an outlot that would be adjacent M Street, would be somewhere right in here. That would be an outlot for what we call future development. And until such time that there are actually lots for development along M Street in a final plat, there would be no requirement for paving of West M. That's typical that improvements are required with the final plat when there's buildable lots adjacent to streets. With that, I'll take any questions you have.
Can you point out on there where that M Street is going to be, or where that?
No, I got it off the M Street's down here.
Okay. Oh, now I see it.
So the only access is whenever this street gets built or something develops over here.
Thank you. So all of the issues, all of LTU's concerns have been addressed.
Yes.
And there's been an agreement reached with regard to West M that satisfies both the applicant and the city.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Is it correct that who would have paid for West M going in? I mean, you have them creating an outlot, but who actually would be responsible for paving that stretch?
Eventually, the developer will be responsible for paving M Street, but it may be many years into the future.
Would, if someone was going to develop on the south, I know there's wetlands and all of that in there, but if somebody came up with something to develop on the south, would they be responsible for half of it then?
Typically, this is a local street, so you're responsible for all of it, to pave it. It's usually whoever's there first gets stuck with it.
Okay.
Any other questions for Tom? Thanks, Tom. Testimony from the applicant?
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Gergen with Clark & Anderson. Tom did a great job of explaining the project. We did defer for 2 weeks to work out these items. There's probably one item that I disagree with him. It is not a simple preliminary plat. Engineering-wise, it was a very complicated drainage analysis. I think in concept, the planning concepts were very simple. We're connecting the dots with the streets that were already platted. That was simple for us. But the drainage analysis that we had to work out with LTU was very complicated. The project financially didn't make sense. We were able to make a compromise with LTU on the drainage and with the M Street to help make the project financially go. The project, this land is sat vacant for quite some time for reasons of that sense. So that is why we were able to make that compromise of M Street. I think to answer, Dick, your question, if we did have M Street come in, whether it's this developer or the developer south of us, I would assume a paving district would probably be sought when that was ready to come forward to help offset the cost of half and half.
Thanks.
Through there. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions for Tim? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, testimony in support.
You're the only two in the room.
Neutral. I'm just doing my job here. Testimony in opposition. Any other staff questions or applicant conversation? Okay, take a motion.
I'd move to close the public hearing.
Second, Joy.
Jerry?
Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Core?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
I would move to approve preliminary plat 21002.
Second, Ball.
Any other conversation?
Nope.
Seems like a relatively straightforward, if complex, preliminary plat. Jerry?
Okay. Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Core?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Right. At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. And I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Oh,
Second.
Second.
Joy and Campbell second.
You really got in front of Dick on that one.
Yeah.
Gotta be fast.
Ball?
Yes.
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Core?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
We are adjourned. Thank you.